Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
The dining room fell silent after Mom made the announcement. I set down my wine glass carefully, making sure my hands didn't shake as I looked around the table at the faces of people I'd fed, housed, and supported for the better part of a decade. We've decided, Mom continued, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she expected no pushback, that since Emily has barely used her room at your house, it makes perfect sense for Marcus to move in there. He's 17 now, and it's ridiculous that he's still sharing with David. My brother Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. At least he had the decency to look embarrassed. My sister-in-law Jennifer, however, nodded vigorously as though this was the most logical conclusion in the world. I felt something crack inside my chest, not anger exactly. Not yet, more like the sound of ice breaking in spring. You took a vote, I asked quietly. About my daughter's room, without me, Dad cleared his throat. Well, we were just discussing what would be fair for everyone. With you working so much, Emily hardly spends time there anyway. She's usually at school or with you at work. It seems wasteful, I repeated slowly, to leave 7-year-old child's bedroom empty for the few hours a week she's not there. She could stay in your room, Jennifer offered brightly. Lots of kids co-sleep with their parents. I looked at my wife across the table. Sarah's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle working. We'd been together for 12 years. She'd been there through every compromise, every sacrifice, every time I'd bent myself into a pretzel to keep this extended family functional. My family had moved in with us gradually, then all at once. First it was Dad after his heart attack, just for a few months while he recovered. Then Mom, because someone needed to take care of Dad. Then my brother Marcus, whose mother, Dad's second wife, had kicked him out after a screaming match about college plans. Then Jennifer and my nephew David when their house flooded. Then my other nephew when his parents went through a particularly ugly custody battle. At one point there were 9 people living in our 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. I never once asked them to leave. I worked extra shifts, taken on side projects, and stretched every dollar until it screamed. Sarah had her own income, thank God, and she'd been equal parts supportive and exhausted through the entire ordeal. The house, the real house underneath all these complicated feelings, belonged to me. I'd bought it 3 years before Emily was born with money I'd saved penny by penny from a job I'd hated. The deed bore my name alone. When I'd married Sarah, we discussed adding her to it, but she'd wanted to establish her own financial independence first. When my family had moved in, we'd never formalized anything because they were family and I was a good son, a good daughter, a good sibling. I'd proved it every day for 7 years. You know what? I said, standing up. I appreciate you all coming over, but I need everyone to leave. Table erupted. Mom started talking about how emotional I was being, how they were just trying to help make the best use of space, how Marcus had legitimate needs and nowhere else to go. Dad launched into a speech about family sacrifice. Jennifer made passive-aggressive comments about how some people got too attached to their possessions, by which she clearly meant rooms and their contents, as though a child's bedroom was somehow comparable to furniture. Everyone needs to leave, I repeated louder this time. Right now, today, not in a week, not after you've called around looking for other options. Today. You can't just kick us out, my mother said, standing now too. We're family. Exactly, I said. You are, and that's why this hurts. That's why you felt comfortable taking a vote about my daughter's room without consulting me. That's why you assumed you could overrule me in my own home. Sarah stood and put her hand on my back. We'll help you pack, she said calmly. We have plenty of boxes in the garage. I'd suggest you aim for leaving within the hour. Never seen my mother's face turn that particular shade of purple. The next 3 hours were chaotic. My brother actually seemed relieved, as though he'd been waiting for permission to acknowledge that this living situation had become untenable. David and his younger brother packed frantically, afraid I might actually change my mind and force them to stay. Jennifer alternated between trying to negotiate and insulting Sarah under her breath. Dad went into a hurt silence, which honestly was worse than the yelling. And Mom tried everything from tears to threats to invoking my childhood promises to always be there for the family. I have been there, I told her quietly, helping her pack boxes with more care than she'd ever extended to me. Every single day for 7 years I've been here, but I'm drawing a line now. This is where it stops. You're going to regret this, she said. Maybe, I acknowledged, but I won't regret protecting my daughter. By evening they were gone. Dad and Mom went to my brother's friend's place. Marcus found a dorm room opening up. Jennifer, David, and the other nephew piled into her sister's house an hour away. The suddenly empty bedrooms echoed with the weight of decisions made. That night Emily came home from school and I took her straight upstairs to her room. I sat on her bed while she dumped her backpack on the floor and kicked off her shoes. Is Grandma still here? She asked, already reaching for her toy box. No, honey. Grandma and Grandpa went to stay somewhere else. Oh, she paused, processing. Then, are they coming back? Not to live here, but we can visit them sometimes, or they can visit us. She nodded seriously, the way 7-year-olds do when they're processing the incomprehensible decisions of adults. Then she crawled into my lap and I held her while she talked about her day. The math test she'd failed, the friend who'd been mean to her at recess, the painting she'd made of our family that she wanted to show me. Our family, all 4 of us now, the fallout was predictable and brutal. My mother called every day for a week until I had to block her number. My father sent a letter, an actual physical letter talking about disappointment and broken trust and the debt I owed him for my upbringing. My brother tried to be reasonable for about 10 minutes before siding with Mom. Jennifer launched a campaign on social media, in which she was carefully vague about what had happened but very clear about my selfishness. Friends of my family called to talk me into letting them back. Cousins sent messages about blood being thicker than water. Someone to this day, I don't know who, suggested that I was a cruel person for not understanding that family members sometimes went through rough patches and needed help. But here's what I understood. I had spent 7 years helping. 7 years of my financial resources, my emotional energy, my home, my privacy, my marriage constantly negotiating around other people. 7 years of feeling like a guest in my own space. 7 years of saying yes when I wanted to say no because I'd internalized the message that being a good family member meant self-erasure. And what I'd learned in those 3 hours when they were packing was that their need for help didn't obligate me to provide it, especially not at the expense of my child's sense of safety and belonging. Emily needed to know that her room was hers, that there was a place in this world where she mattered most, where her needs took priority, where she couldn't be voted out by committee. I needed to know the same thing. 6 months later, my mother called from an unknown number and asked to meet me for coffee. She looked smaller than I remembered, which might have been because I'd finally stopped carrying the weight of her expectations around in my shoulders. I want to apologize, she said after we'd ordered. I've been doing a lot of thinking therapy. Actually, I waited. I realized that I've always pushed even when you were a kid. You were always so capable, so responsible. I think I leaned on that, and I didn't even realize I was doing it until you set that boundary. I softened slightly. Why did you take a vote? Because I wanted to feel like it wasn't my fault, she said quietly. Like I wasn't the one making the decision. If it was a family decision, then I wasn't imposing. But that's not how it worked, is it? I was still imposing. I just tried to disguise it. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about her own childhood, how her parents had expected her to take care of her younger siblings, how she'd never learned to ask for help, how when she'd become an adult she'd unconsciously replicated those patterns. I told her about the panic I'd felt lying in bed at night, wondering when my house would stop being my house. Can we try again? She asked. Not living with you, I understand why that's not happening, but some kind of relationship. We started small. Sunday dinners every other week. Phone calls, she asked before visiting instead of assuming. My father eventually apologized too, though it came with more conditions and caveats. My brother has been slower to come around. Jennifer remains blocked on all social media and I'm at peace with that. The biggest shift though has been internal. I've learned to say no without guilt. I've learned that taking care of myself isn't selfish, it's necessary. I've learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're the architecture that allows genuine connection to exist. Emily's room is still hers. Sometimes she falls asleep at my feet while I work in the study. Sometimes Sarah and I find her paintings tucked into the corners of her shelves. It's a room that's used and lived in, not wasted, and I am the owner of that room, of that house, of that boundary, of that life that matters more than I can articulate. If you're reading this and feeling the weight of family obligations, I want you to know your house is yours, your time is yours, your child's room is yours. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. The people who love you will understand a boundary. And the people who don't understand, well, maybe they need to learn from a distance.